So now let's take a closer look at the AndroidManifest file. Again, this is a vitally important file because it exposes information about your app to the Android system. So it's important that you have everything set up correctly in here. So I've just created a blank project. I haven't done anything with this, and I'm just going to double click to open that manifest file. Now, one of the things about the way this is set up here in Eclipse is you can either go through this kind of visual editor to set all of these things, which can be helpful when you're first starting out, or you can just directly edit the XML. Now you'll notice how simple this XML file looks here in comparison to some of these screens, which have just tons and tons of options. So generally speaking, once you get the hang of things, most people probably work directly in the manifest.xml view, where it's just editing XML. Now I will say one thing about the Android developer tools is while they are very good, there are certain places where things are not as good as they could be. So things like code hinting is broken in a lot of places, particularly when we're dealing with XML. So this is where it can be helpful to go to some of these kind of visual screens. But let's just walk through this. So in the manifest, we define the package, which you already did when we created our project. We have the version code, which is the internal version code. And then we have the string, which is actually presented to the user. And we can see when we come down here, another thing that we're going to do from this screen later on is this is where we actually export and sign our APK file, which we can upload to the market. So let's go through here and we'll go to the application tag. And these all correspond to areas of the actual XML view here. So manifest here is that first tab. Application is right here. And we can also see the uses SDK, min SDK version equal to 10. Again, because we're only dealing with Gingerbread here in this course. But again, just want to remind you, you should set it as low as possible when you're actually building your application. So we'll go to application here. And here we can set a whole host of different things. So here we have the label for our application. And this is what will actually be displayed in the launcher on the Android device for your application. If we want to use a specific theme, which we'll get to in a future movie, here we reference what icon we want to use for our application. And all applications by default include a default icon for you to use. You're obviously going to want to customize it with your own icon when you're building your application. We can set, again, all of these different things. I'm not going to go over all of these different properties, but it can be useful here, let's say for things like permissions, because if I click this, we now have a nice pull-down menu with all of the options. The code hinting in the XML side doesn't always work the way it was intended. So usually I'll go back and forth and use a combination of things. Now you can see under application nodes, here is where our activity is. So each activity in our application has to be defined in the XML. So here we can see our main activity, which is the one that's first launched when the user opens the application, is here. If we wanted to add other activities to our application, which we usually will want to do, we'll also have to define them here in the manifest file. So if we go through, we have a permissions area, and this is where if we want to request certain permissions that we need in order for our application to work. And again, this is what the user sees when they go to install your application on the market. You're warned when you install an application which permissions this application is asking for. Instrumentation, we're not going to worry about that in this course. But generally speaking, it's a very simple file with a very scary set of screens that you have to walk through. So again, for myself, I'm only working here in the XML view, and for the most part, that's what we're going to do in this course. But again, the manifest file is just a file that describes the capabilities, the permissions that are needed, and things of that nature to the Android system. So it's basically a descriptor of your application.